on and just introduce myself. I'm Linda Glauben, and I'm with the Dallas Jewish Historical Society. I'm helping to interview our local citizens about their history here in Dallas, and I'm here today with Judith Judith Minkin today. And so we're just going to talk. I want you to tell me all about your life here, etc., etc., and things that are important to you. And why don't you tell me first a little bit about you, where you were born, and how you ended up in Dallas or became a Dallasite.
I shall do that. I was born in Kansas City, Missouri, to my parents, Milo and Louise, but she was always called Dolly Minkin, and grew up there, graduated high school there. I have one brother, Philip, who's now living in Lawrence, Kansas, in an assisted living facility. I went to grade school. Actually, my first residence was an apartment down on 27th Street in Kansas City, which I wasn't old enough at the time to recognize what kind of neighborhood it was, but I think it was a middle class to lower middle class neighborhood. And we had an apartment there during the war. And my father, who I think at that time was he worked in a butcher shop. Well, when he was in college to pay for college, he worked in a butcher shop and ultimately left that job because the employer wanted him to put his thumb on the scale when he weighed out the meat to sell, and he couldn't handle that, so he left that job, but ultimately bought into the flower shop that was next door. And so during all my elementary school years, he was a florist there, worked a lot with the Jewish community in Kansas City. And my mother, while he was alive, did not have employment. She worked at home, and I think particularly enjoyed playing poker, which she did sometimes twice a day, once in the afternoon and once in the evening, with a group of 7 or 8 friends, and they all complained about losing all the time, so they began keeping books to actually codify who won and who lost.
Oh my goodness!
So that they had a record of it. I went to Troost Elementary School and enjoyed being there. My kindergarten and first grade years were down in the neighborhood where I was initially born, on 27th Street. And I remember having heard about this wonderful kindergarten teacher named Miss Bueller that I wanted to have, and cried when I got to school and thought maybe I might not get her, but I did have her, and I was there for first grade as well. I was a model napping student. She would point to me and she said, "This is how you would look if you were really sleeping." Like Judith is not, but anyway. So, anyway, I was a volunteer at a very early age, I think when I was about 5, which would have been in 1942-ish. When you could let kids do things like that, I went out on my own collecting money for the March of Dimes. I went around the neighborhood, several blocks away. Guess you couldn't do that now, or mother would have to accompany you or something. And I was there until the end of the first grade. Then we moved to where I really grew up, on Rock Hill Road in Kansas City, Missouri, just up the street from Menorah Hospital, where I had been born, and which was a very prominent hospital there. We lived there during all my grade school and high school years. And after grade school, I went to Southwest High School, which no longer exists, but it was situated in a more affluent section of town than we lived in. And so I initially came in not really knowing anybody because they didn't come from my elementary school. But finally found a place for myself. I was an excellent student, and I think was 3rd in the class by the time I graduated high school. Active in the Literary Society and in the Future Teachers of America. And I think I got the Latin Award for taking 4 years of Latin, which included Julius Caesar and those kinds of things. I always recommended that kids take Latin because it was such a help in learning English and getting root words and things like that. I was never in a spelling bee, but I remember in grade school playing spelling baseball. So we get a word right and you get to move on. So back in those days, they had insufficient teachers, so I was in split classes. So I was in a 4th and 5th grade class when I was in 4th grade, and sometimes did work with the 5th grade students, and then 6th and 7th when I was in the 6th grade. So the same thing happened. Thought I wanted to be a teacher. I always helped other students with their stuff and did quite well myself. I think my worst grade was in piano, which I guess I took that in high school. I think in high school or I can't remember. I think it was college. I took it. That was my only B, I think. Otherwise, I had all A's in both high school and I had a B in Latin one semester. So, yeah. But she was an excellent teacher. Anyway, I thought I wanted to be a teacher until I went off to college. I'm going to interrupt a minute because my father died when I was 15.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So my mother then went to work as a bookkeeper in Gateway Sporting Goods, a sporting goods store there near where my father had his flower shop. Let me just say a little bit about that. He had Milo's flowers for many, many years. And then a few years before his death, he bought a minority interest in the Muehlbach flower shop at the Muehlbach Hotel in Kansas City.
Okay.
And he was there when they opened up an addition and knew everybody. Everybody knew him by his first name. He went was allowed to come into the kitchen and sample some of the hors d'oeuvres, which apparently had been sitting out too long and the food was tainted, and he ultimately got food poisoning and died from that.
My goodness.
But in those days, doctors made home visits. Well, I guess concierge doctors now make home visits, but they stopped doing that, and the doctor came to him and saw him the day that he died that night in his sleep, so it was quite a shock.
My goodness.
So I didn't really learn much in the flower business, but his flower shop was my refuge. When I needed to get away for an afternoon, I would go down to the flower shop and learn how to, water things and put corsages together, and it was a lot of fun. And it was walking distance from there to the synagogue that we belonged to, which was abbreviated KIBS. I think it was Knesset Israel Beth Shalom, but I think later became Beth Shalom when it moved to the south part of Kansas City, which is where most of the Jewish community lived.
You were going to go to college for teaching, and then what happened?
Well, because my father had died, we didn't have much money for college, so I started working part-time when I was in high school, and I had saved up, I think, about $2,000. So when Texas State College for Women sent me a brochure, just the initial brochure with pictures of the campus, and it looked so pretty because they have hundreds of redwood trees there, and that picture obviously showed the red buds in bloom. And I thought that looked nice, and it was fairly inexpensive. I applied to the 7 women's colleges for scholarships, like Wellesley and Barnard and Smith and those colleges. And I got accepted by those to whom I had applied, but no scholarship. They all said, if you do well the first year, we'll see that you can continue on. And I was afraid of spending all my money in 1 year and not having enough to finish. So I applied to Texas State College for Women, and they gave me a scholarship, $100 scholarship which took care of my out-of-state tuition. And Sears Roebuck had given me a $275 scholarship for being one of the top students. So half of the first year was paid for, but the total boardroom and tuition back then, talking 1955, $675. Boardroom and tuition and books.
Oh, wow.
So that's a drop in the bucket compared to what it costs now.
It's one day.
Anyway, my plan was to go there and for a couple of years and then transfer to a coeducational school because TSCW was obviously just for women. And at the end of my sophomore year, I was elected class president for the junior class and decided that had decided already that I was going to stay there for my junior and senior years. So I did do that. Lobbied in Austin for the name Texas Women's University because they were thinking of calling it Texas Ladies University, which would have been horrible.
Yeah.
But at some point after I left, they made it, right, my left. They made it, they admitted men, so there were men there just like there were women. Can you flip that off a second? So
They'll edit it out. It's
okay, great. Thank you. Usually I can do that, but
I have trouble sometimes too.
I need a piece of material because my fingers slip around. Anyway, I enjoyed being the class president, and one of the things at Texas Women's University that they had was something called Stunts, which was a variety show that each class, freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors, put on. And I participated in all the stunts. My freshman year, I was an elephant. So I had a trunk, and a pillow to make me a little beefier. But our class didn't win that year. I think we did a Scotch Highland. I have
Like a dance?
records of all the. It was I can't remember the name of the thing, but we had some wonderful singers in the class, and so I always participated. And I think my sophomore year, I had the idea of raising money for our class by selling sandwiches at rehearsals, which were at night, and people got hungry, after dinner, if they had a light dinner. So I had gone to the Dean of Women to request it, and she said no, but I didn't take no for an answer, so I went to the president of the college, who at that time was John Gwynn, and he gave me approval. So since I worked in the pub, which is the student union building there, and had learned how to make pimento cheese, we made pimento cheese sandwiches and sold them to earn some money for the class.
I'm afraid that the paper's going to make
Do
the
what?
background, the paper rustling is going to interfere. So
Yeah, I'll leave my glasses on to see on my notes here.
So you ended up in Texas because you went to Texas Women's University.
I ended up in Texas because
of school.
of finances, really. My father's death
Right.
made me go to an inexpensive school that I thought I would like. So I came down here on the train on my own and moved into the dormitory.
Yeah.
And a funny thing, when I first moved in, went up and down the hall and meeting some of the other students on my floor, and I met somebody from Paris.
Oh, my.
And I said, Paris, France? No, Paris, Texas. And I met somebody from, I think it was Dublin anyway. That was also not Dublin, Ireland. That was Dublin, Texas. And then I met somebody who said she was from Bogota. And I said, Texas? She said, no, Colombia. So that's quite funny. I'd gotten in here. But
funny.
I've since found out there's lots of states and countries that have cities in Texas named after them. So anyway.
So did you become a teacher?
Well, no, when I went, I enrolled, I was planning on being a teacher, so I took the required courses, English, and I think I took a math course, and I loved chemistry in high school, so I took a chemistry class and gave some thought to going the chemistry route. But mainly I wanted to be a teacher, so I took whatever class was the first requisite for teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And I stayed in it for about 3 weeks. It was so dull. I had never stopped a class before, but the teacher was very dull, and I dropped the class. So I think I picked up an extra science class and ended up with a sociology major, because I did take sociology and then enjoyed that.
Mm-hmm.
And in the senior year, they called it a pre-social work sequence, but now they have a BSW degree, I think, which includes some of that. But we went into Dallas twice a week, drove a school car into Dallas, and I worked at the Dallas County Juvenile Department, where I enjoyed working with dependent children and occasionally a child who was adjudicated delinquent.
Mm-hmm.
Toward the end of that school, I had 2 years doing that, or maybe it was just the one. I decided I would like to go into social work. And sorry about that. Should have turned my phone off. I don't get many calls, but this morning has been an
You're
exception.
busy today.
Hello, this is Judy Minkin. This is the doctor who wants me to come back in, and I'm not sure if I need to come back in.
Oh. If you need to take it, we can pause. So.
They were,
If you need to call, we can pause it or whatever.
no,
Okay.
I went to a pulmonologist because I
Oh.
had fluid, I think they call it pulmonary effusion.
Uh-huh.
And he sent me to the hospital to get it removed. But other than telling me I had a breathing restriction, didn't do anything that was helpful. So maybe he has something now that he could give me, but I have to think about whether I want to go back. I've got a number of other things that are going on,
Okay.
like dealing with the cancer that I had that I've
I'm
had
sorry
for
to
a
hear
year.
that. Yeah, yeah.
And more recently, it metastasized in my right hip, so I'm
So
expecting to have appointments next week to get started with some radiation, which they could not do on the belly tumors, because there were too many of them and they were too big.
sorry.
Okay,
You were with a young boy who was adjudicated, and
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
you were talking about your experience with the courts with a young boy who was adjudicated, and
Oh,
your
yes,
work
right,
with
I was
social
there,
work.
okay. I worked there for the school year, and then toward the end of the year, they had a vacancy.
Hmm.
So even though I had been offered a job with Procter & Gamble as a representative to introduce products and things that would involve a lot of traveling, and I'd have to give up my car, which I had purchased with money that I'd borrowed from my mother. They offered me the opportunity, they offered me the job, even though I was going up against a woman, a delightful young, somewhat older woman who had experience. They gave me the job. So anyway, I had to turn down the others, and I ultimately kept my car, my Volkswagen that I had
Oh,
taken the train down to Houston to pick up when I bought it. The Dallas County Juvenile Department still exists, but when I was there, there was no child welfare in the state of Texas, or Child Protective Services, I guess it's called. So we handled those kinds of cases. And I was into my first year of working when the Dallas Women's Council came to the Dallas Juvenile Department and said, we have a scholarship for a woman to go to graduate school. Well, none of the women who worked there, single women, wanted to uproot their lives and go off, and I had been there, a month and a half, 2 months, so I accepted the scholarship and applied around, but I went to the Columbia School of Social Work. It was New York School of Social Work at that time, and ultimately got a Master's of Science in Social Work over a 2-year period. The first year I used the scholarship money, which had strings attached. I had to promise to return to Dallas to use my expertise
Sure.
in the Dallas community. And so the first year I worked, I did my field work, which is like practice, at the Family Service Society. And the second year I got a position with the VA in Newark, and it was a paid position at GS9. So that was it, like a scholarship, and that helped pay for the graduate school. So I was able to pay for it that way. The college work I had paid for myself with my little part-time jobs and the money that I had saved when I was working for Three Sisters as a sales girl way back in high school. I was there for 2 years, and when I graduated, came back to a job at the Dallas County Juvenile Department where I worked in the delinquency division. I worked there for a couple of years before Bernie Goldstein from Jewish Family Service came to offer me a job. And initially, I stayed where I was, but ultimately I did accept a job with him and was there from 1962 or 1961 to 2000, when I retired a little bit early from Jewish Family
You
Service.
were there a long time.
A long time, and it changed dramatically. I mean, there was a full-time social worker. That was I, so funny. And a part-time senior worker, somebody who worked with the senior citizens, and a secretary, bookkeeper, and Bernie Goldstein. So there were only 4 of us, and now I think they have over 250 on the staff, and kept growing and growing and growing and growing. So, yeah, it changed a lot from, and my introduction really to Judaism, although I went to Sunday school and confirmation class, I stopped going after that at the synagogue that the family belonged to. My family were not observant, and so that wasn't a real big part of my life, but I learned about the holidays and more about Jews in general and the community working at Jewish Family
I'm
Service.
sure you did. It was connected to everyone, basically.
Yes. Yeah, learned a lot about the people
You
in the
did.
community and
Yeah.
the leaders, and I was always a social worker, but as the agency grew and took on more programs, I became the facilitator of the Big Pals, which is kind of like the Big Brothers and Big Sisters, where I matched kids from single-parent families with older adults, mostly single, but sometimes married. And really enjoyed that program, and we had lots of activities. It no longer exists at Jewish Family Service. They have picked up that program. They didn't pick it up when I retired, which is really too bad, because I think the kids appreciated it, and some of them formed such wonderful relationships that after the little pal got married and had children, they still continued a relationship with their big pal.
Wow. That's very nice.
So I was also a volunteer. I talked about my volunteerism starting when I was 5, but I worked, I always helped kids with subjects that they were having difficulty with, if I could. And then I became a volunteer at I joined National Council of Jewish Women. And after I got to the Legacy, I joined Hadassah, but I've never been active in Hadassah, but I was active in NCJW. I was in the singing group, and more recently in Hippie, which is a program of working with disadvantaged kids in preschool and kindergarten.
That's nice.
They have good programs there through.
Yeah.
And then there was a program called Kids in Court that I did up until my cancer diagnosis, where you go and they have a program where they help children feel more comfortable about the court setting, so that when they are called as witnesses in their own cases, they won't be overwhelmed with anxiety and not knowing what's going on. So they help them, introduce them to the judge and the attorney, the prosecution attorney, and their own attorney, and the court reporter's job. I was the quote court reporter that they sat with, and they had to take down everything that was going on. But anyway,
That's
great program. So
That's a great program, and also that's a great career to be involved in, helping so many youthful children.
I've always enjoyed working with
that's
with
great.
children, and I've done a number of 2-week or longer volunteer stints with Global Volunteers situated in Minnesota.
Oh,
Early on, I went to Rarotonga, which is one of the volcanic islands near New Zealand. I think they use New Zealand's money.
wow.
And I worked with people helping with English, and just in general, I worked in the senior center once there. And then I went 1 year to Spain, again doing ESL work, English as a second
Sure.
language, and to Greece. And most recently, in 2019, to Tanzania, to work with a program where they work with pregnant women and mothers of children under the age of 3 to give supplemental food, hygiene help, medical help, so that the children avoid being stunted, which so easily happens when they eat nothing but the corn product that they make there. That's pretty awful, actually. We tasted it, so.
Oh,
Anyway, that was a lot of fun, and I learned a little bit of well, I knew a little bit of Spanish because I'd taken it in college, and I enjoy speaking Spanish and helping volunteer with that. I learned a little bit of Swahili, which is what they speak in Tanzania, so I could answer the children when they asked me how old I was, and they always commented on my lipsticky. That's what they call it. She's got lipstick.
lipsticky.
Anyway, that was my last big
That was
volunteer
pretty
effort.
recent, up to 2019, right? So-
2019, I went in
2019.
September,
Yeah.
and it's a very long flight to Tanzania. I've always
Yeah.
liked to take big trips, and because I think I forgot to mention I was in the Navy Reserve.
No, I didn't know
I joined
that.
the Navy Reserve when I was still at the end of when I graduated, and so I was doing that, and I did 2 weeks annual duty for training as a
Nice.
consequence of being in the reserves. And years later, after I initially started, and I was doing that when John F. Kennedy was assassinated
Oh,
in Dallas. In fact, it was Jack Ruby, I guess, killed Lee Harvey Oswald on the Sunday that I was drilling at the naval base here in Dallas.
oh,
So that was,
what a time.
voting for Kennedy was the first person I ever voted for, and I really admired him and was pretty much devastated. When we went, actually I was on the phone talking to a client's relative in California I was at Jewish Family Service, when my boss came in and asked me to get off the phone, and I couldn't imagine why, and then he told me about the assassination. because moments before I had just come back from lunch where I had stood on Main Street and watched the parade and waved at Jackie and Jack. And
Oh my
it was-
goodness.
yeah, it was quite a shock.
Wow.
Kind
That
of
was kind of.
forget where I was.
You were just talking about your career, and basically you were traveling up to
Oh, yeah,
2019.
the travel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I took nice trips, but many of the trips were with, in addition to the volunteerism trips with Global Volunteers, I had joined the Navy Reserve
Mm-hmm.
pretty much when I joined Jewish Family Service back in 1961, and because working at the Dallas County Juvenile Department, people from the Navy would come there and they would check juvenile records before they allowed a young man or woman to enlist.
Oh, really?
So I got to talking to them and found out that you could be part-time in the military, because before I graduated college, I had considered going into the military. I even took the Air Force physical with another young woman who wanted to go into the Air Force, and ultimately decided that I wasn't going to do that, but just opened up the door to a way to participate on a part-time basis. So I was a weekend warrior for 38 years at Jewish Family Service, and 35 years in the military, where I was a personnelman, took care of enlisted people's records, although as a reservist, I had to do officers' records as well, keep track of what was going on with them and their records. And
That's
I enjoyed
interesting.
being there. I didn't always love getting up so early to go out and muster at 7:30 in the morning at the Naval Air Station, but anyhow, I did that for, as I said, 35 years. And even after I got out of a paid position, because we did get paid to do that, I served as a volunteer, what they called the Fleet Reserve, for a couple of years. So that enabled me to get to New Orleans to work the Mardi Gras. And so I got to see Mardi Gras. Came home with 18 pounds of beads that I collected from going to the various. Don't know what happened to all those, but anyway.
A lot of kids got them, I'm sure.
Yeah. I never married. Was serious about somebody at one point, but then didn't. And always regretted not being able to have children. I didn't think I was brave enough to adopt a child as a single, and there wasn't that much single parent adoption going on, but here I have an opportunity to get involved with other people's grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and enjoy sharing jokes with them, because I love telling jokes. So.
Oh, cool. So how long have you been here at Legacy then? When did you
I
get
came to
here?
Legacy in June of 2008,
Oh.
which was less than 2 months after it opened. So I wasn't among the very first, but maybe the
Pretty
first,
close.
among the first 30-ish
Yeah.
people that came here.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been in the same apartment, which I enjoy. It's one of only 3 apartments like it at the Legacy, so it's a little different. So I enjoy that,
Okay.
and have participated in many of the activities here. I used to always go to the Plano Symphony and the Dallas Symphony.
Mm-hmm.
But then in January of last year, when I got the diagnosis that I had 6 months to live, I decided not to continue with season tickets, because I wasn't going to be around. So I've only gone to a couple of concerts
I'm
this year.
sorry to hear that, but it's been longer than 6 months.
Yes,
and
it
so
has.
You're
I
proving them wrong.
Past the 1 year mark. I don't know
Keep it up.
how long I've got, but I'm trying to make some use, although more recently I've had trouble getting around, so that's limited me somewhat.
Mm-hmm.
I love movies and plays, and used to go to all of those,
Mm-hmm.
and musical events. And then I was an usher for a while at the Eisman Center, after I moved
Right,
to the Legacy.
right, yeah.
Didn't know it existed prior to that, but anyway. So I've been here since 2008 and began working at the American Airlines Center in 2008. No, in 2000, when did I? 9/11, well, that was 2001, right?
2001.
Yeah, I started working for them. It had just recently opened. And I thought, oh, here's an opportunity to see all kinds of shows and things and not have to pay. So I was an usher there, enjoyed hockey and basketball in particular, and
Oh, nice.
had some chances to see amazing artists like Cher and Pavarotti and
Oh,
Billy
wow.
Joel and Elton John. Yeah, those were exciting
That's
times.
a great way to do it.
Yes.
That's
Sting.
awesome. Sting? Wow.
Sting too.
Wow.
And then when I moved out here, I started working as an usher at FC Dallas, which is now Toyota Stadium. It was Pizza Hut Park, I think.
Right. It was, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I learned about the other kind of football, but I enjoy spectator sports, love watching tennis and basketball, and particularly college basketball. My father went to KU, and so I'm a big Jayhawks fan. And then I watch the Cowboys
And then you watch the Cowboys.
and root for the Chiefs.
Well, you got a good team in there somewhere.
Yes, right. Looking forward to next Sunday.
Yeah, our poor Cowboys. But the Chiefs, I think, I'm hoping they'll come through. So.
Yeah, I'm a little hard of hearing, so I've
Oh.
lost some of my hearing. So it's sort of like my ears have got ear plugs in them. I can hear myself. Maybe if I go like this, that
Oh,
won't
I'm
look
sorry.
so good on the
Right,
video.
So I'll speak louder for
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Yes, yes. But you've done a lot of really interesting things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not the typical stuff, but then, I didn't have being a wife and a mother to occupy myself
Mm-hmm.
and do other stuff. So I was very active while I was at Jewish Family Service, and then I continued to be active with some volunteer stuff after that was done, so that I could be out. I couldn't imagine how I could get everything, how I could have accomplished all the things, the day-to-day things that I needed to do while working 40 hours a week, or sometimes more than 40 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow it got done, so.
You said that you, growing up, were not that involved in your Judaism. Are you more involved now because of your connections with Jewish Family Service or being here? I mean, is it more in part of your life now?
No, I wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
I did participate for a number of years with the Temple Emmanuel Choir, so I enjoyed it, and I, of course, was at services for all the high holidays, singing in the choir. And I haven't gone to many services here. I did enjoy it when we had the rabbi speak at a lunch and learn. They still do that occasionally. And Yitzhak Cohen, before the Legacy got its own rabbinic position that Michael Cohen now works in. Yitzhak Cohen would come here once a month. He was a delight, and I encountered him early on, I think in a Yiddish class at the JCC.
Oh, he was a pretty amazing man. Yeah.
So, no, Judaism hasn't been a big part of my life, but I have enjoyed celebrating the holidays here, and, well, I was at Jewish Family Service. The Jewish community, when I first came, numbered about 20,000. I have no idea what the size is now of the Jewish community.
I'm sure it's much bigger, but I remember.
They've got so many more congregations and
many
things.
more congregations, and I know just the neighborhoods and everything have grown tremendously, which is a great thing. So, but being part of JFS is definitely that's being part of the Jewish community in life. that's what you did. That's a wonderful legacy.
I was always very proud of the organization and all the accolades that it achieved, of which I was, a very small part.
But an important
Anyway.
part.
And while I was there, I also handled the financial assistance program,
Oh my.
which the agency has, and you didn't have to be Jewish to be able to get money from the Jewish Family Service for essentials like rent and food. And of course, then they developed the food bank while I was there. And,
I volunteered there.
oh, do you? Well, in the old days, I was at the location that we abandoned. We moved on from the Federation building
Right. That's right. That's where it was.
to being on North Haven, and then from there to Alpha.
By the tollway, Arapahoe.
Well, no, that was, first we were on Alpha and Coit
Oh, okay.
in the building that Ed Roth, I think, as a
Oh.
volunteer, had found for us, and we were there for a number of years, and that was a lot closer to where I lived.
Ah.
I had bought a townhome in the Chimney Hill community, so that was pretty close. And then ultimately they bought, with Edna Zale's help, they bought the building on Arapahoe where they are now, and running out of room there now. But they moved to that building in November of 1999. Is that right?
That sounds about right.
Maybe it was at the end of 2000, in November.
Yeah.
And then I retired at the end, so I had to pack up all my stuff and move to the Arapahoe location. And then, a month and a half later, repack and move it all out, so.
Wow.
I've been in a number of different locations with Jewish Family Service over 38 years, starting with downtown and the Baker Hotel Annex.
Really?
And then we had a satellite office at Preston Royal.
I'm going to pause
My phone
this.
does not ring. I don't know what's going on.
There's more that you want to add to this? I'm happy to.
Okay, let me
We've
just look
done
here.
almost, about 45 minutes.
Has it been that long already?
Yeah.
Gosh, time flies.
Check your notes and see if there's anything there you want to add. We want to make sure we get everything.
I just want to add a little bit about the volunteer activities.
Sure.
That I did.
Yeah.
I started off with, way back when, Plano Symphony. I volunteered with them both in the office and in the, they call it the petting zoo, where you go out during the balloon festival, and kids would come up and they would have a chance to try the violin with a bow, or they weren't supposed to blow on the wind instruments, but they did. And I'll never forget one little girl. She was 3 or 4 years old. She took the violin and the bow, and all of a sudden she made a long, drawn-out chord. It actually sounded good, and her face just lit up. It was so cute.
Oh,
But I volunteered with them. I ushered, again, at the Eisman Center, and at the Legacy. I used to visit people in the healthcare setting, new patients, and bring them little gift bags and
oh, that's nice.
do activities with them. And then I helped play bridge. I love playing bridge.
Do you?
So I would play bridge with some of the residents in assisted living. Sometimes it was hard to get up a foursome, but I was never a mahjong player, so I never could volunteer in that way. But anyway, I've sort of just always been a volunteer.
You've done many interesting things, and you've gotten involved in many different ways, many interesting ways.
And I volunteered while I was at Jewish Family Services
Yeah.
as well. I have some good friends
Yeah.
whom I started with back in 1989. When they walked through the agency, they were from Uzbekistan, and it was a mother and father and a 9-year-old girl and a 3-year-old boy, which thought, that's just like my family. I was 6 years older than my younger brother. So I volunteered as an ESL teacher with them, and then they became friends and followed them through all their various moves from apartment to house to house. So it's been rewarding. I've really enjoyed that.
It's great. That's wonderful. You've certainly given back a lot.
Yes.
Yeah. And things you were interested in too. So
Yes.
yeah.
Well, I like people. I liked helping them and getting to know more about their cultures and to.
Nice.
But I thank you very much
Well,
for.
I thank you very much for your story and your history. It was a real pleasure hearing all of these things that you've done.
Thank you.
You know, and I wish you health. The best thing I can do for you. Wish you some good health
Yes.
there.